tuning into today's video. I'm going to have a look at weather next 8 to 10 days. In today's video, it takes us to around the 6th of November. So we're going to be seeing a lot of high pressure again. High pressure rules for roost as we go through into the start of November. Rather unusual weather patterns, really, for this time of year. You would normally expect the Atlantic to be ramping up and starting to bring some bands of heavy rain and strong winds, but no sign of that. High pressure looks pretty dominant as we're going through into the start of November. And as I explained yesterday, it will be quite mild under that high pressure. Though, of course, we've got to be thinking a little bit now about long nights and mist and fog, potentially maybe some frost as well. Even though it's warm enough, it could get quite cold on the surface, depending on the exact nature of the air mass. If it's sort of an Atlantic type air mass with high pressure, then it's likely to be fairly cloudy and mild. If it's more of a continental influence, though, it could start to get quite chilly, even with sort of southerly, southeasterly winds. So the upper air temperatures in this sort of pattern by November, perhaps not necessarily all that reflective of the conditions on the surface. So we'll have a bit of a think about that over the next few days. But before I get on with the video, I'll show you the charts in a second. But before I get on with that, just to say about the ASDA, sync to articles and all the pages at Gazovitz, have browse widgets, click through the links. If there's any articles that you're interested in, thanks so much for doing that. There's also video ads, most pages say open having content when you watch them. They'll close back up against or helping to pay for the website. Before we just start off with centering temperature for October, this is provisional, of course, up to the 26th, so up to yesterday. It's currently standing at 10.9 degrees, which is an anomaly of 0.0. So basically, we're bang on average for this time in October. Now, this is provisional, so once we get to the end of the month, it's likely to be corrected downwards a little bit. It usually is. But on the other hand, we're probably going to tick this up a bit over the next day or so, because we're in a very mild air mass at the moment, and likely to stay pretty mild really through to the end of the month. So I anticipate this central temperature will come in somewhere around that sort of number, actually around 10.9, maybe 11.0 or 11.1, something like that. Again, it won't be a great deviation from the average. This is 61 to 90, of course. This is being set again. So, again, some more modern average, say 81 to 2010. Again, probably a little bit cooler than average, if anything. And you see how close to average we've been running throughout the year, really. I mean, January comes out with an anomaly of just 0.6 of a degree above average, February 0.3, March 0.7. Our biggest anomaly was April, which came out 1.1 degree above average, and then May and June and July both coming out ever so slightly below average, but nothing really in it. May was the biggest anomaly there, just 0.4 of a degree below average. August, 0.1 of a degree above average. And then September, we know we had a pretty cold September actually, so that comes out with an anomaly of a degree below average, and a degree below 61 to 90 is quite significantly cooler than average actually. And then October, we've gone back to being very close to average, whether we come out ever so slightly above or ever so slightly below. Probably be ever so slightly above, I would say, but whatever, it's going to be very close to the long-term average when all is said and done. So quite an unusual year, really, to be running so close to average. It may sound a bit surprising, that, but you don't get many years where virtually every month is within a degree of the average. Maybe something really bizarre will happen in November or December. We'll have to wait and see. So have a look at the weather next 8 to 10 days. We'll have a look at the 500 millibar height anomaly charts first of all. We've got the E70F here on the top, and the GFS is on the bottom. 500 millibars, 80,000 feet is an area absolute high pressure, low pressure, being moved around by a jet stream running above. And red is extrapolated high pressure, blue to low pressure, and no surprises what's going on here. Both the E70F and the GFS placing a big ridge of high pressure, not just around the UK, but across most of central, northern, western Europe. That's a huge area of high pressure dominated. Where if we had this in summer, we really would have had a prolonged and extended heat wave type pattern across virtually the whole of Europe. British Isles would have been included in that. The GFS is just a little bit more active with the Atlantic, just running the jet stream in a little bit more towards us, but really they've both got high pressure dominating through that first week of November. So we can see this quite clearly on the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles. Red line here is the 30-year temperature average. We're going to be very significantly above average really throughout the whole of the ensemble. So we're well above the red line going into the second week of November there. Now, as I've explained, we do have to think a little bit about inversions underneath this high pressure, so this isn't necessarily all that reflective of how high the temperatures down where we are on the surface will be. It could turn colder, especially at night, with fog and maybe frost as well. We're going to have a look at the exact surface conditions in terms of the dew points, where the air mass is coming from, whether it's continental or Atlantic source. All of that kind of thing will start to become more important as we go through next week. But certainly a fairly mild-ish start to November looks likely. We've got some rain coming up for the rest of this week. There'll be a band of rain coming across the country. Well, it's down in the southwest right now, quite wet down there. That'll be spreading northwards and eastwards across the country tonight into tomorrow. And then more rain probably for Thursday and Friday. So a little bit of rain coming up there. But after then, a lot of dry weather actually going through into the start of November. So dry and pretty mild if you're taking that ensemble at face value, but not quite as straightforward as that with the temperatures. Temperature anomaly for the coming week, 27th of October to 4th of November, I should say, coming out warmer than average. The precipitation anomaly coming out drier than average, but not as dry as it is across most parts of Europe. The reason for that is that we've got some rain coming up over the next 2 or 3 days. But even then, it's still a little bit drier than average as the anomaly. And these charts will probably turn redder, actually, as we run through the week. If we look at these again, say Thursday or Friday, I'd anticipate these would look drier as sort of the next day or two begins to drop out of the period. So drier and milder than average is the call from the ensemble data. Having a look at the GFS generic charts. This is the 6 o'clock run for Saturday, Halloween. I did an update last night for Halloween and Bonfire Night. I probably shouldn't mention this, but the charts I was showing for Halloween was actually the day before the 30th of October. I don't think anybody noticed, but I got the wrong day, so very sorry about that. I did get the right day for Bonfire Night, though. This is the chart for Halloween, anyway, for the 31st of October, and we're bringing up this southerly wind. So it's still the idea that we've got at the moment, really, high pressure across virtually the whole of Europe, low pressure in the Atlantic, a squeeze between the two draws the air up from the south. This is a very mild airflow. I don't think it'll be quite as warm as it was on Halloween last year, where it got ridiculously warm. I don't think it'll be quite that warm, probably because there'll be more cloud and some rain around. But certainly a very mild airflow coming up from the south. Anyway, as we move through to Sunday the 1st of November, high pressure remains very much in control for at the start of the new month. And that goes on, actually, into next week. Lots of high pressure influences. We saw it on the height anomaly chart that high pressure going to be dominant as we go through the first week or so of November. Weather systems will try and get in. Here comes one on Tuesday, perhaps bringing a little bit of cloud and rain to Scotland and Northern Ireland, but it's mostly dry across England and Wales. And we sort of keep this pattern going ready through to day 10. So this is Friday, the 6th of November, and high pressure still more or less dominating, particularly across England and Wales. Again, a little bit more unsettled for Scotland. Could be some cloud and rain up there, just running the jet stream through. But overall, that is still sort of high pressure, pretty much in control. We could have a quick look at the upper air temperatures with that. So we're in a fairly mild air mass across England and Wales. It's a little bit cooler, though, for Scotland. And the dew points show that, again, they're fairly mild as well. And that's because the Atlantic is really the air source. If you go back to the upper air temperatures, you follow the isobars back and you see, but really we're bringing Atlantic source there into this area of high pressure. Go back to the dew points again. Look how cold they are across central parts of Europe. So it is possible that if you get a continental flow, even when it's warm aloft, you could start to bring this colder surface air across Europe into the UK under these sort of conditions. So warm air aloft doesn't necessarily from November onwards mean cold, mean warm on the surface. Could be cold on the surface, but not in this scenario, because as I say, the air mass with this high pressure is basically coming from the Atlantic, at least on the GFS anyway. ECMWF looks like this for a Saturday again. High pressure across most parts of Europe, low pressure in the Atlantic, bringing up these southerly winds. You can imagine what a heat wave this would have been if this was, say, the end of July rather than the end of October. As we go through into Sunday, very little change. High pressure remains dominant across virtually the whole of Europe. That continues into the start of next week as well. Weather systems trying to come in, but really it's this high pressure that carries on dominating the weather through next week. And unlike the GFS, which does try and break the high pressure down a little bit, actually the ECMWF keeps that high pressure very dominant through the middle and even into the latter stages of next week. So this is day 10, Friday the 6th of November. Very much a case of high pressure in control. And you notice with this, if we have a look at the upper air temperatures with this, the air mass, if you follow the ice bars back, the air mass is more continental, really, less of an Atlantic influence. So although it is warmer aloft, this could actually be a bit colder on the surface, especially at night through the second half of next week. You'd certainly have to think about mist and fog if high pressure is clear, possibly ground frost as well. Unfortunately, we can't see the dew points and the surface temperatures with the ECMWF. There's so much data that it would be lovely to be able to show you from the ECMWF, but they keep it all hidden away for their private clients, unfortunately. So there's very little I can show you from that. But I think that would be colder because it's more of a easterly, southeasterly continental influence. And then finally, this is for GEM day 10 chart, and it's same idea really. High pressure is dominant across most parts of Europe and the UK. I've got quite a deep area of low pressure around Iceland, possibly bringing some wet and windy weather into Scotland, but this normally overdoes low pressure actually for GEM. It's always a bit different, and I would suspect that's a bit over the top with the low pressure. And the overall theme of the update is that we're likely to have some rain through the first part of this week. Then high pressure becomes increasingly influential over weekend into next week. A dry, very anticyclonic start to November. Pretty mild, but if we get a continental flow setting up next week, we've got to think a little bit about colder nights and mist and fog potentially as well. But loads of dry weather coming up for the first half of November and for the first week of November, and quite unusual really for this time of year. As I say, the Atlantic should normally be ramping up now, so it's all a bit different, but very dry and anticyclonic. That's all for now. 5-day forecast tomorrow, so come back for that. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.